Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into one of the most pressing issues in global politics right now, the mounting pressure on Russia and how a bold U.S. move could completely alter the balance of power within the next 12 months. The world has been watching closely as tensions escalate, economies shift, and alliances form. What we are about to explore is not just about strategy, but about a long-term plan that could leave Russia with fewer options than ever before. When we talk about the U.S. and Russia, we are really talking about two major powers that have shaped the modern global order for decades. Each side has strengths, but also vulnerabilities. Russia's strength lies in its natural resources, particularly energy exports like oil and gas. For years, this has been the backbone of its economy and a source of leverage against Europe and other nations. However, this very strength is also its greatest weakness. The U.S. understands that Russia's dependence on energy revenues makes it vulnerable to shifts in global markets and sanctions. That is why Washington has been steadily working to undercut Moscow's financial base by targeting its oil and gas sector. This move is not just about sanctions, but about reshaping global energy flows, encouraging alternative suppliers, and accelerating Europe's transition away from Russian fuel. By doing this, the U.S. is cutting off the lifeline that funds Russia's military and geopolitical ambitions. In addition to targeting energy, the U.S. has been weaponizing technology. Russia has always struggled to keep pace with the West in advanced technologies such as semiconductors, aerospace components, and artificial intelligence. By restricting Russia's access to critical technologies, the U.S. is ensuring that its industries fall behind, limiting Moscow's ability to produce advanced weapons and maintain a modernized military. Over time, this technological chokehold can cripple a nation that relies heavily on military strength for influence. Another dimension of this strategy is financial isolation. The U.S. and its allies have already excluded major Russian banks from international financial systems like SWIFT. This has made it harder for Russia to conduct trade and access global markets. While Russia has attempted to build alternatives with partners like China, the reality is that the U.S. dollar still dominates global trade. As long as this remains the case, Russia will struggle to bypass Western restrictions and maintain stable financial connections with the rest of the world. But perhaps the most significant move is in the area of alliances. The U.S. has reinvigorated NATO and strengthened ties with countries across Europe and Asia. Nations that were once hesitant to take a firm stance against Russia are now fully committed to isolating it. This global alignment means Russia is facing pressure not just from the West, but from an interconnected web of countries determined to limit its reach. The more isolated Russia becomes, the harder it will be to sustain its economy and military ambitions. Now, you may wonder, why is the U.S. confident that this pressure will break Russia's back within just 12 months? The answer lies in the convergence of economic, military, and political stress points. Russia is already spending enormous sums on the war in Ukraine, straining its budget and forcing it to dip into reserves. With sanctions cutting into revenues and global markets closing off, those reserves are shrinking faster than anticipated. This means Russia will have less money to spend on weapons, social programs, and maintaining domestic stability. History shows us that wars are often won not just on the battlefield, but in the economic trenches. A country can only sustain conflict as long as it has the financial and material resources to do so. By strategically attacking the foundations of Russia's economy, the U.S. is effectively waging a war of attrition, one that Russia is poorly equipped to handle in the long term. The cracks are already showing, and the pressure is only increasing. Another element is the brain drain. Russia has seen an exodus of highly skilled workers, from engineers to software developers, who no longer see a future at home. This talent loss further weakens Russia's ability to innovate and compete globally. At the same time, sanctions on technology imports mean the country's industries are falling behind at an accelerated rate. Together, these factors create a downward spiral that is difficult to reverse. Meanwhile, the U.S. is playing the long game by securing energy dominance. By increasing oil and natural gas production, supporting allies like Qatar, and boosting renewable energy investments, Washington is making sure that Europe and other regions never again rely on Russia's supplies. This weakens Moscow's ability to use energy as a weapon and cuts into the profits that once gave it geopolitical leverage. China is often seen as Russia's lifeline, but even that relationship has limits. While Beijing benefits from cheap Russian energy and trade, it has no interest in becoming overdependent or risking secondary sanctions from the U.S. This means that Russia cannot count on China to fully offset the damage being done by Western measures. In fact, China is in a position to exploit Russia's weakness, buying its resources at heavily discounted prices while giving little in return. Politically, the pressure is mounting inside Russia as well. Sanctions have driven up inflation, eroded living standards, and created shortages of key goods, while the Russian government tries to maintain control through censorship and propaganda. The reality on the ground is becoming harder to hide. Discontent is simmering, and the longer the war drags on, the more difficult it becomes for the Kremlin to convince people that this path is sustainable. Looking ahead, the next 12 months are critical. The U.S. strategy is designed to tighten the noose around Russia's economy, limit its military capability, and cut off its diplomatic options. Every move has been calculated to increase the cost of Russia's aggression while reducing its ability to retaliate. If successful, this could push Moscow into a position where it can no longer sustain the war effort or maintain its influence on the global stage. Some analysts believe that the true breaking point will come when Russia can no longer finance its military operations at current levels. Already, reports suggest that its defense industry is struggling to keep up with demand, running low on advanced components and relying on outdated equipment. If these shortages worsen, Russia could find itself unable to compete effectively against a Ukraine that is receiving steady Western support. It is important to understand that breaking Russia's back does not necessarily mean total collapse or surrender. What it means is that Russia will be forced into a position of weakness, unable to dictate terms or project power as it once did. The U.S. is not seeking an outright destruction of Russia, but rather a strategic weakening that ensures it cannot continue its current path without severe consequences. Of course, risks remain. Russia is not a small country, and it still holds significant military and nuclear capabilities. The challenge for the U.S. and its allies is to apply enough pressure to weaken Moscow without pushing it into desperate actions. This balancing act requires careful diplomacy, but so far, Washington has managed to build a coalition strong enough to maintain unity against Russia. In summary, the combination of energy disruption, technological restrictions, financial isolation, alliance building, and political pressure forms the backbone of the U.S. strategy. Each of these measures alone would hurt Russia, but together they create a comprehensive approach that is difficult to resist. Within 12 months, the compounded effects could leave Russia in a significantly weaker position, struggling to maintain both its war effort and its domestic stability. The next year will be decisive, not just for Russia, but for the entire global order. If the U.S. strategy succeeds, It will send a powerful message to the world about the consequences of aggression and the strength of collective action. For Russia, it will mark a turning point that could define its future for decades to come. So as we watch events unfold, one thing is clear: the U.S. is betting that time is on its side and that in just 12 months, Russia's back will be broken under the weight of economic, military, and political pressure. Whether this prediction comes true will depend on how effectively the U.S. and its allies can maintain the pressure, and whether Russia can find any unexpected way to adapt. But as of now, the momentum seems firmly against Moscow, and the world is watching history in the making.